You read the description and maybe you all experienced that also sometimes the work is fun in the garden or also somewhere else, and sometimes it's just no fun. Yeah? When Raquel was sharing about weeding all these carrots, I can imagine it wasn't fun in the beginning. And that's also a little bit my experience, that, you know, at times we find the pleasure in it. At times we are motivated to achieve whatever we want to achieve, but at times we are maybe feel like we push ourselves too hard, or we maybe don't push ourselves hard enough, and so the work doesn't get done. Other times we experience, I don't know if you experience at least once a week, that there is just a lack of motivation. Yeah? We know that it should be done, we have it on our to-do list, but we kind of push it to the back and think, oh, maybe this task we should do before. Or we are even frustrated about ourselves because we see we can't manage to reach all the goals that we wanted to reach, and then we just don't do anything. Yeah, that can happen as well. I come also, like Raquel, from a homeschool family. I grew up in the mountains on a beautiful farm where there was a lot of work. And I grew up never really questioning if I want to work or if I don't want to work, because our parents didn't give us the choice. But in my mind, I often had the thought of, I don't really like it. Yeah. So I was working because I was supposed to work, but I didn't really find pleasure in it. And my parents tried different ways of how to motivate me, but then after some years they realized maybe Rebekka is maybe not the most practical. I have two older and one sister, and they are very practical. One of them, he became a mechanic, the other one a gardener. But I was kind of always a bit slow in the work and hanging a bit behind. And then my mom said, oh, maybe it's better you become a kindergarten teacher. So that's actually what I took then as an education. And then I went to Norway to become an au pair for 1 year. And in Norway, yeah.
What?
Au pair, like a nanny for children.
Okay.
Yeah, because I wanted to get some practical experience, but I didn't really want to work in the kindergarten, but I wanted to rather work in a home setting. And from there I went to a mission school, and then they asked me in the mission school to stay 1 more year, and they said, oh, since you grew up on a farm, why don't you take over our garden? And you remember, I didn't really find pleasure in gardening. I mean, I did it because it has to be done. But the thing is, I really enjoyed the atmosphere at that mission school. And so I didn't stay because I wanted to work in the garden, but I stayed because I enjoyed the atmosphere. So that was my way into gardening. And that's why I talk about to find pleasure. Because some people, they grow up, like my brother, and they just enjoy working and they enjoy everything they do. But then there are others that have to find it. And I think also for us there is hope. And over the years I have studied for myself then many of these different Bible verses where it talks about whatever we do, do it heartily. Yeah? That we actually do the work that we do to the glory of God. Yeah? That hard work seems to be a part in the Bible, and it seems to be for our good. Say again?
We can't avoid it.
Yeah, we can't avoid it, yeah? When we look at the different examples of Noah, was 120 years building an ark. I don't know how long you have been working on your longest project, but you know, when it goes over a month and maybe 1-2 years, it gets long. You want to see the results. Yeah, and we have many of these biblical examples that have been working so long on something. And I do believe that they worked on it because God gave them the task, but still they must have also found pleasure in it. You understand? Because there is one way of doing a work and there's another way of actually enjoying it. Jesus himself was the most busy person. We know from Spirit of Prophecy that there was no other life ever so crowded than Jesus' life. So he was very, very busy, working hard, laboring for people, and he seemed to have fulfillment and pleasure in it. And that's what we would like to have too. So from Spirit of Prophecy, there are several quotations that I like for myself that I found that give me at least a theoretical understanding why work is good. Yeah? One of them is in Patriarchs and Prophets, it talks about it strengthens our body, our physical well-being. is good in shape, or it's important for us also to work in order for us to move. We are created as beings that have muscles and that need to somehow move, not just sit. Yeah? Another way is that Ellen White, she says that true joy is found only with the working men and women. We might find a lot of different joys in life, but it seems like only with the working men and women, with work, we can find this true enjoyment, this deep joy in our hearts. Yeah, it's also from Patriarchs and Prophets. Another reason that Ellen White gives us is that work is actually a safeguard against temptations. There's another quote where she says that the idle mind, so if we don't do anything with our minds, is a workshop of Satan. So because then Satan can get very busy in there because we have nothing to do. So work is actually for ourselves a protection. God created the work for us, for our good, even though it doesn't always feel so good. Another reason is also it can help us to develop habits of self-control. It can help us to develop our character. Another reason is also that especially when we work in nature, we can learn from nature. It was after they went out from the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, and then their children and grandchildren came, and then some of them, they started gathering in cities, and some of them, they stayed in the countryside, and there they taught their children from the book that they had at that time, the book of nature, who God is, and they taught them the enjoyment of following God's will. And so I believe there is a reason for us why we should be more connected with nature, because there are two books where God reveals His character, and we are very good to study the Bible, and that's good, but I believe there is a bigger book out there just in front of our eyes where there is so much more about God's character, where we can learn so much more. And one other reason that I took from Desire of Ages, that I think that for us, for our character, is very important that we do also the small things very faithfully, even when nobody sees, or maybe especially when nobody sees. Yeah, you remember maybe Mary when she was wiping the feet of Jesus. She was seen by a few people, and they maybe didn't understand why she was doing that. But in the end, the whole world gets to know her story. Yeah? And so the little duties are counted very high in God's eyes. So that's one other reason why we can know we do the work, maybe even people don't see it, don't appreciate it, but in God's eyes, it's counted very highly. So that's some of the theoretical reasons why it's good. Oh yeah, works. Why it is good to do work, why for ourselves, yeah, why we work. Yeah. I'm working now at the moment at Bogenhofen. That's theological and also primary school education and high school in Austria. And the students, they come for some hours to work with me in the garden there. And they have different reasons why they come. Some of them, they say, we like more to work in the outside than to do the cleaning. So their motivation is not necessarily that they want to do the work outside, but they just like more the work outside than the cleaning. So for them, it's a reason of what to prioritize. Others, they say they just enjoy the fellowship. So there can be different reasons why we do the work. Yeah, important is for us also to find a reason. I have been discussing a lot with them why they do what they do and what keeps them motivated when they don't like it anymore. Yeah, especially in gardening, I think it's very important that we reflect also ourselves, because everybody functions a little bit differently. So that's what I said. Sometimes we want to do the work, but the question is, how can we find the motivation and the enjoyment to get all the way to actually get it done? And I think we need to be aware of that there are certain problems, and if we discover them, we can actually also avoid them. One of them is fear. Sometimes we are afraid of the challenge, of the responsibility. Yeah? When before I went to Bogenhofen, to Austria, When they asked me, I thought, oh no, to be the gardener, there's so much responsibility and I have no education in gardening and how can I do that and so on. And the fear can often limit us. So we need to detect also and say, oh, that's a fear, so that shouldn't be the reason for not doing it. Yeah? Or it can sometimes also be the fear of that there's a change. Because when we do a work or when the work is getting done, there's also a certain change with it. Yeah? And sometimes we like to have it always the same way. So then that can also hinder us. Sometimes also when we know we should do a task, but we don't have clear goals or we don't have clear steps to reach the goal. So if we have like small steps and we know this is what I achieve and after that I will achieve that, we will find the fulfillment step by step and see, oh, now I accomplished that, oh, now I accomplished that. And we are like God, because we are created in His image, we enjoy when we accomplish something. Yeah, when you look at God, He created something and then He looked at it and He said, oh, it's good. And then He created the next thing and He said, oh, it's good. We don't get the report that only in the end of the week He said, oh, it's good. He enjoyed step by step, and that's important for us too. Yeah. Sometimes we also have a priority conflict. We have a lot of things, too many things, and we don't know anymore what to prioritize on. And then we get demotivated. Yeah, that can also be a struggle. Another thing can be that we don't feel like an ownership for the work. Yeah, we see that should get done, but no, maybe somebody else can do it, and then we just go. And so we don't even put ourselves to it, and we can never find the pleasure also in it. Yeah. Another thing can be that it can be an over challenge for us, or it can be an under challenge. Yeah, we can feel too much challenged by certain tasks, or it can be boring to do it for many hours. Yeah? And then we need to find a way that can challenge us again. Sometimes it's also not so fun to do a work for many hours when you're alone. Raquel was talking about the family working together, and that can be a big motivation. If one of the children would have done it all by themselves to eat the carrots, I can imagine they would maybe have given up, or at least wouldn't have found pleasure in it at all. Yeah. And one other reason also in the work situation that makes us often to not enjoy the work anymore is burnout. Yeah? When we get too much overwhelmed by the work, we don't enjoy even the simple tasks. So we need to make sure that we work enough, like I said before, that we don't get into that all the temptations take us along, but also not overwork. So that balance, God has to give us wisdom step by step. So for me, there is 4 main cornerstones, I would call them, that are helpful, at least for me, to find pleasure in the work that I'm doing. The first one is self-confidence. When you think about the story of David, before he faced Goliath, he actually faced his older brother. I don't know if you have ever noticed that story, where his older brother tries to discourage him from doing the work that would have been a task from God, right? And what does David do? He doesn't listen to that advice because of 2 reasons. One reason was because he knew what he can do. Yeah, he talked about that he was facing lions, he was facing bears, because he had experienced already before certain situations. So he knew what he can do. And the second thing was that he knew what God can do. He said, God delivered me out of the mouth of the lion. So those 2 things gave him self-confidence. So if there is a task in front of us that we feel like, oh no, it's so much and so on, God can help us to have the self-confidence, first of all, that we know what we can do because of the past experience. Yeah? We know already how God has been training us. And the second, to know what He can do. Then to see the difficult goals as challenges and not problems. I don't know if you understand, because a challenge, you feel motivated to actually solve it. A problem, often it limits us. Yeah? So it's more in our mind than because on the outside it's the same. But to see it as a good challenge that you want to try to actually see how you can manage it. And then you will find joy by doing so. And then also autonomy, that you have the motivation of self-direction. There's a software company in Australia, it's called Atlassian, and they tried out with their workers that every 3 months they gave them 24 hours where they could work with whomever they wanted to work, on whatever they wanted to do, however, whenever.
Not only Atlassian, also Google.
Say again?
Also Google.
Also Google, yeah. And then they realized, like the only condition was that after the 24 hours, they had to present what they were working on. And they realized the creativity went up, the motivation went up, the people enjoyed much more to work at the place and to do also the other tasks. So to have this, that you feel also that you can have ownership of the task, that can help us many times. So whenever we schedule our week, sometimes it's good to not fully like plan every minute, but to have some time like where you say, okay, and there I will now choose something totally different, what I really want, where I put my heart into it. And then the rest of the work will also be different. So wherever we really want something, there is also a way to achieve it. Yeah? The second cornerstone is the positive mindset. We should be more aware of our thoughts. I like there is an Ellen White quote where she talks about people, but I think we can also direct it to working. She says, when we are tempted to complain or to say something bad about somebody, what shall we do? We shouldn't just stop that thought, but we should find something good in that person's character. And I think it's the same about work. Yeah, when we want to start complaining or like in our mind, like, oh no, and there's so much, that we actually focus on trying to find something good. And I have experienced many times, at some point I don't even realize, but suddenly I just like the work, yeah, because I focused on the good parts. So that's, at least for myself, has been very helpful. The other part is also to impress ourselves and not trying to impress others. Because if you always want to do the work in order that others see what we got done and then we feel good about it, it can very easily at some point lead to that we are not motivated to do it anymore, because maybe people don't see it at sometimes, or they might not agree with how we did it. So it's important that we do it to God's glory and also for ourselves, and not only in order to please other people. Yeah. And also one other thing is that we don't, in our mind, that we don't have this mindset, oh, now I have to do the laundry, oh, now I should weed there or harvest there, but that we say, I choose to do this. Yeah? By I choose to, it helps us to be more positive about it. And if we are more positive about it, we will find also more pleasure in it. Then one other thing is to focus and to have strong goals. Raquel was already talking about a to-do list. I don't know how it is with you if you have to-do lists, but for me it just is such an enjoyment when you cross out one thing and you check, this is done, and then the next one, check, this is done. And so you go through the day and you got small accomplishments, and they really give you the enjoyment of doing the work. Another thing is the routine. I have a few student missionaries that work full-time with me in the garden, and one of them, when she came this year, it was her first time to work in a garden. She came from a big city, and you can imagine if you then have to work 8 hours every day and it gets cold in the winter time, and her motivation wasn't really so much existing, at least not in the working setting. But then at some point I noticed that there was a sudden change. Yeah? And I didn't understand what really happened, because the work was the same, the environment seemed to be the same. And then she told me, she said, oh, I started now getting up every morning very early, and I do my devotion and I do exercise and I go to eat breakfast. She didn't go to eat breakfast before either, she just came directly from her bed, right? And because she had a routine outside of the working hours, it also helped her to enjoy the work so much more and to have more motivation. So on her example, I saw it really helps that we, outside of the work, that like in every area, that we do have a routine. Then, like we said already before, to have clarity, to have clear small goals, small steps, and a long goal that can help. And that we stay committed to the challenge. If we start something, that we also finish it. Because that will help ourselves also. Maybe along the way there is not always the enjoyment with it, but then when we finish it, we look back and we enjoy, and then when we next time have another task that is very difficult and long, we know by experience that we will enjoy it, and that will help us as well. And it's important that we have a purpose. I had some of the students last week that I asked they should cut the grass under the apple trees. And then after they finished the task, they came to me and they said, why did we actually have to do that? We learned in classes that it's not so good to cut the grass under the trees short because all the bees and everything should live there, and why should we cut it? And I'm like, oh, so you didn't understand the purpose and you had to do it. I understand that they didn't have then really the motivation for doing it, yeah, and we talked about it. So it's really important that we know why we are doing something, because then we have our heart in it as well. And that's, yeah, for each one of us. And sometimes if we really do not enjoy the work we are doing, it's not that we have to stop the work. Sometimes we just have to think differently, a different method of how to do it. And that can give us enjoyment. So that's what we often do also together in the garden. When I see the motivation goes down and the enjoyment goes down, then I talk about, so in which other way could we get this task done? Because it's necessary to get it done. And they have very creative ideas of what we could do. And sometimes we try it out and it doesn't work. But it's good to sometimes change the how, and that can boost the motivation as well. The fourth cornerstone is a motivating environment. To have other people that you can feel accountable to, yeah? That there are other people that ask, so did you already get this done? Or by when did you want to have it done? And that can help us, because then we are like, oh, I already told her that I should get it done today, so maybe I should really get it done. And then also this, that you can enjoy together that it's done, yeah. So that can help. And then also to have a balance between working alone and working in a teamwork. Sometimes it's good to accomplish things in a teamwork. I realize at times when I put all the students together at one place, there is a lot of communication, and that's also very nice that they can talk besides the work. But at some point the communication is more important than the work, and so the work doesn't get done. So we need to, for ourselves, also find a good balance between teamwork and working alone on tasks. But I do believe that we need each other also to encourage each other. And it's important to the environment also to have goals that we can easily reach. If we always set ourselves goals that we will never be able to reach, it will be hard for us to accomplish it and to enjoy it on the long run. Good. Maybe you know or you have heard about this book. This has been a real inspiration to me while I was at the mission school, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you ever want to research on that, there are summaries like this on the internet about this book, where it talks about the different chapters. On YouTube even you have short clips. Or you can also get it as an audible book, or you can read the whole book. But it gives really a lot of practical tips in what we can do to become more effective. And whenever we are more effective, we also enjoy the work more. Because often our enjoyment goes down because it seems like the work doesn't move forward. That's often what hinders us. Yeah? And I also want to take here one Ellen White quote where she talks about reaching people, and that the highest aim of us should be to save souls. But I do believe it's also in the small tasks that success in any small area, it really needs a definite aim. It demands a definite aim. If we really want to reach high, we also need to have an aim that is high. So that can help us also to actually get a lot of work done and to find enjoyment in it. So we do need high aims, but we need to have small steps to reach the high goals. Just in the second part, to motivate others, I will jump over this one. But that one I found very interesting for myself also. We were discussing with the students about how do we motivate plants to grow. I don't know how you motivate the plants to grow, but we don't stand there and we try to give them a talk in how they should grow, and we don't try to give the special music, yeah, at least I don't. But the first thing that we do, we provide the right environment. We give the right soil, we give water, we try to put them in the light and so on. And it's for others as well, if we want to motivate them, we need to give a certain environment that can help them to grow. Yeah, that doesn't make them grow, but it can help them. And when you buy some flowers, there is always a label to the flower, and it says on there how to treat the flower, and each flower has to be treated differently. Each vegetable has to be treated differently. Yeah? You don't water the cucumbers the same amount as you water maybe the eggplants or so. Yeah? They need different amounts of water, of sunshine, and the same is with people. So we need to study people, and studying is by asking questions also about, we can ask them, what motivates you? Yeah? That's a common question I like to ask them. Especially then when the motivation goes down and I see, oh, they don't really like to work anymore, I say, so what would motivate you? And then they have some ideas. So to study each person individually, like the way how we also study plants or try to improve for plants, also their growth, that can help. And to treat them as they want to and not as we assume that they should be treated. Yeah, so we need to look at the individual needs. So some steps for me that helped to motivate others was to be an example. When I give the students different tasks, I split them sometimes in groups, and then I am there with the group that has the hardest work. Yeah, if I always go to the one that has the easiest task, the others will also assume that, aha, she doesn't like that either, it's actually not a work one can enjoy. But if I'm there and work with the task that is the hardest and I actually enjoy it, that joy can jump over because they see that I enjoy it. It can also happen, and that happened to me too, that I'm working and I'm enjoying and trying to be an example, and they all just watch. And so we have to, then is the time to also try to motivate them again. Yeah, so that can be something that can be sometimes a danger in just being an example. But usually it helps. If you, at least for me, I say, so what can we accomplish together? And then they try also to help along again. Establish good relationships. Whenever there's a good relationship, it seems like we enjoy more the work together in the team. Yeah? And good relationships is by talking, by getting to know each other. In the garden, we discuss about all kind of topics that come to their minds. And that's good, because in the classroom, they often just sit and listen. But then in the garden, we actually get to talk about it. So that's, I think, can help to establish relationships. And then also, sometimes we have wishes, but we don't have clear, defined goals. And if I don't define a goal very clearly for others around me, it will be hard for them to actually do it and to find joy in it. And to encourage along the way, yeah, that's very important. Also to help to organize better. Sometimes it's a matter of time management, that some don't get the work done or that they are not motivated to do it. And if we can just help along and say, what can I do to make it possible for you? Or maybe we should sit down together and make a schedule. Maybe that can help you. Yeah? And also to remind them of the purpose. It doesn't always help to just say the purpose of the work in the beginning, but along the way to remind ourselves together again. So what was the purpose again? Oh yeah, that's why we are doing this. And to give responsibility. I realized sometimes small responsibilities can really boost the motivation and the enjoyment of the environment that I'm working in. And to not always say, oh, you didn't do this well and this should have been done like that. Sometimes it's also okay to not mention that, even though it might have been done or it could have been done better. Sometimes it's good to see the positive things and to praise that, and that can actually motivate even more then. And to listen and provide feedback, like I told before. God, he looked at what he created and he enjoyed it. And this enjoying things together that we accomplished is very important. At least I remember my father every day in the evening when we finished something, he's like, oh, it looks really beautiful, look at there and look at there. And, and that helped us also to, oh yeah, it looks really beautiful, to just have this feedback. Not necessarily praising, oh, you are a good person, but the work that we did together, it's really well done. Yeah.
This is the
Yeah, that's the real praise.
Praise because it's very specific and it's
Yes.
a good job very well
Yes.
and general
Uh-huh.
and not meaningful to the person, but this is a very specific praise.
Yeah, and it can also help because if we only praise the people or the children or teenagers, often then their self-worth is dependent on our praise, and that shouldn't be. Yeah, so that's why to praise the work. When I was working in the kindergarten and also as an au pair in the family, what I realized is the best is to take the children with you when you do the work, that they are just always next to you. Yeah, that can help. And also to give them small tasks, small responsibilities, and to praise the work like we talked about, and to admire together. Yeah. And one thing that for me at least helps me a lot in motivating others is Christ's method. This quote is taken in evangelism, but I believe it can also be used for motivating others. Yeah? It says in Minister of Healing, Christ's method alone will give true success in reaching the people. The Savior mingled with men as one who desired their good. He showed his sympathy for them, ministered to their needs, and won their confidence. Then he bade them, "Follow me." And so for us, I think in order to motivate others, that they can also enjoy the work, is first of all, we need to mingle with them. If we are very distant and we are only the ones that tell them, do this, do that, or you should have done, that sometimes creates a wall between us and them and can make them even less enjoying the work. So to mingle with them, to understand what are actually their needs, what are their desires, what is on their heart, and to show sympathy for them also in their personal lives. Yeah? And then minister to their needs as much as you can. Yeah? I have had several students, because of we talk in the garden, we work in the garden together, and afterwards we started studying the Bible together because of the discussions that we had in the garden. So when you get close to them, then you can also easier find a way to reach them in the work then as well. Yeah? And whenever we win their confidence, that we can show them that it's not just about the work, but it's more about through the work we can actually come even closer to God. And that's our highest aim. Yeah, it's not to accomplish the work. There are a lot of people out there, they do not believe in God and they work hard. So it's not only about to work hard, but it's to work for the glory of God and to help ourselves and help others that the character can be developed in the right way. So that's from my side. Do you have any things that you want to add, any comments or any questions? I'm sure a lot of you have many experiences in both areas, in motivating yourself, finding pleasure yourself, or also motivating others.
So what's the age you can start with? What's the youngest participant?
The youngest that I'm working with at the moment is 13, and the oldest, those are the theology students, the teacher students, they go up to 30. So it's quite a wide range of students, and I try to also mix them a bit because that can help the older ones getting more responsibility, and in that way helping the younger ones to be more motivated also. Yeah.
Because we're considering starting a project with much younger fellows, and I was wondering what's the lowest age?
I was working in Switzerland for 1 year at the health center there, Sonmat, maybe some of you have heard about it. And by the time when I was there, they had a lot of challenges because the youngest baby was just born, and there were some health issues. And then the two older children, they were a lot with me. So they were 4 and 2 years old. And they were just the whole day with me. And sometimes they played a bit alongside. But often they came back and they said, "Oh, can we help this and can we help that?" So they helped me cleaning the rooms, preparing the rooms for the guests, cooking, and yeah. So that's 2 and 4 years old, yeah. The 2-year-old was sitting on the table because she couldn't stand, so she was sitting on the table in the kitchen trying to cut some cucumbers. Of course, they were not cut in the perfect way, but often I used then whatever they did for the family, and I cooked for the guests, yeah. But they were alongside there, working next to me. That really helped.
Yeah, invariably with our 3 boys. Up to 6, 7 years of age, maybe, they were very helpful. Just with you.
Mm-hmm.
Then when they realize it's a bit of effort that I could play, do something else. Yeah, I have challenges motivating my boys too. So this is very good for me.
Yeah. What I understood is also that the first years of a child's life is very much filled with intrinsic motivation. The motivation comes from inside out. A child would never learn to speak or to walk or to imitate us in a way as grown-ups if it hadn't that desire to do it. But later then that switches, and unfortunately our school system also makes that switch is even harder or even more, that we only are motivated extrinsic. So we are motivated by the grades, we are motivated that our parents will give us something if we do that task. Or through competition, yeah. And then this intrinsic motivation actually becomes smaller and smaller, and that's our task maybe also in ourselves and in others to boost that one in a way, or to help it to not die, because that's the one that God gives us.
Yes, it's important to keep this, also keep our brain from the low condition, because there are some habits which destroy the power from the low and power of how to motivate and be creative. And I look at the cartoons, to the iPhones, to all those modern devices which actually destroy our power from the low, and our capability to self-motivate and be creative. And
how would you suggest to manage between, how do I say this, the difference between rewarding and, what was the word? Sorry, let's translate it. The difference between rewarding yourself and actually being motivated to finish yourself. I don't know if you get what I mean. Especially when you work with younger age, in order to motivate it, you usually promise certain rewards. You will leave early, you will get this time, you will do that, and of course you'll see the motivation. But on the long term, you're actually cultivating a different path that you are supposed to be putting on them. So,
yeah, I can only say from my own experience how my parents did it. We were not really rewarded in as such that we got money or that now you have a day off or whatever. But often it was, like I said before, my father just looking at the work and say, wow, it's really, and it's done and it's nice. And that was reward enough for us. So maybe that's a way of there should be always a reward for ourselves also. And I think the reward doesn't always have to be that we receive something, but just that we look at something and we see it's well done. So if that is, to feel the ownership for the task, it can be easier than also to not focus on a different reward, but to just enjoy that it's done.
Have you ever watched Carol Dweck's video?
No.
Oh, the way you speak, it's like you are more or less in line with her thoughts. Carol Dweck, you can watch it, it's on TED.com. And she speaks about the positive mindset, about the reward system that is very poisonous in our schools, because this is what's the product. You have people working in different corporations who are waiting for the star, for the praise from the boss, but the boss cannot be occupied with only praising you because there's so much work. And she's talking about this. It's about positive mindset. It's about developing this kind of thinking. And it is done through our praise, how we praise people. It starts with parents, the way they praise people, and what you mentioned this morning. Their parents were not occupied with praising you and you only the whole time. They were occupied with training, and this is the proper trend and the right one.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I observed in the students I work with, those who are motivated in the smart kids who are not motivated to study.
And
Often they're not, yes, so it's kind of related, those
Yeah.
choices.
So that's why what Ellen White wrote, it has so much meaning, because if you first train them in the practical, they'll develop this motivation, intrinsic motivation, they'll stay longer, and you won't have these challenges first 7 years intrinsic, and afterwards come and see what happens with your motivation.
Yes.
That's why it's the right approach.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. It was very good.
I think we will just finish. Yeah, we'll finish with a word of prayer, and then it's already time for food. Yeah. So let's pray. We can kneel down. Father in heaven, I want to thank you so much that you have created work and you have created us, and you want us to also find enjoyment in the work. I want to ask you for each one of us that you may give us wisdom in the different small and big tasks that are ahead of us, that we can really find the enjoyment, that we can find the purpose in it, and that you may give us also wisdom in how we can motivate others, and that we can always have this goal in our mind that we want to become like you, and we want to follow you fully in each area in our lives. Thank you so much for this. In your name, amen.